This suite is reserved for your successful older brother. Broke moochers like you don't belong in this house. Get the hell out, my father roared, shoving my suitcase out the bedroom door with zero hesitation. Standing right beside him, my older brother smirked, stroking the gold watch on his wrist. Pack up your cheap trash and get out of our sight. Don't embarrass me in front of my high society fiancé. I didn't cry. I stopped crying in front of them a long time ago. I just quietly picked up my small suitcase, walked out the grand front doors into the howling blizzard, and climbed into my modest rental car parked alone at the curb. I powered on my secure corporate phone. The screen lit up, displaying my business account balance, $150 million. And within minutes, my phone began to blow up. 59 missed calls flooded the screen. Then came a frantic voicemail from my father, his voice completely broken, trembling, and desperate. Sarah, please pick up. The bank just froze all our accounts and issued a foreclosure notice on the estate. Law enforcement is on their way. Julian says you're the only one who can save us. Please, Sarah, help your father. What they didn't know was that the very mansion they had just kicked me out of, I had secretly bought out 3 years ago. And in just 15 minutes, they were going to be the ones thrown out into the freezing snow. My name is Sarah Vance. In the eyes of my father, Robert, I was always the invisible daughter, a total disappointment compared to my supposedly perfect older brother. Ever since I was a child, I understood the painful reality of blatant favoritism. My father showered all his praise, savings, and love onto Julian. And me? I existed in that house like a shadow, only noticed when they needed someone to run errands, or when my father needed a punching bag for his frustration. The most agonizing memory that still burns in my mind happened 4 years ago. I was struggling through the early days of starting my business. I was bedridden with a high fever for 3 straight days in a tiny rented apartment, unable to afford medication, and exactly $500 short on rent. Broken physically and emotionally, I swallowed my pride and called my father, begging him to lend me $500. Do you know what he did? He put me on speakerphone for the whole family to hear, then laughed out loud. Why would I waste money on a useless failure like you? Don't ever call here begging again, you moocher. He slammed the phone down. That exact same afternoon, Julian posted a picture on social media, posing next to a brand new $40,000 sports car. A gift my father had just bought him, simply to celebrate passing a basic finance test. That night, lying alone in that freezing room, tears mixing with my feverish sweat, I made 2 promises to myself. First, I would never beg anyone for a single penny ever again. And second, I would build my own empire with my own 2 hands. Over the next 8 years, I buried myself in work. I put in 80-hour weeks, barely ate or slept, channeling all my pain into building my tech and venture capital firm, Apex Capital. Even when the company exploded into a powerhouse worth $150 million, I chose not to flex or brag. I still wore simple clothes and drove a practical rental car every time I went home for the holidays. Not because I was cheap, but because deep down in the heart of a wounded daughter, I held on to a faint sliver of hope. I wanted to see if my father could ever look at me with genuine love if he thought I had nothing to offer. But reality is bitter. And my patience had officially reached its breaking point. If you've ever been the overlooked child, or if you've ever had to hide your tears and work in silence just to prove everyone wrong, leave the word "ready" in the comments below. Your support and subscription to Revenge Mosquito give me the strength to share this story of sweet justice. Now, let me take you back to that fateful Thanksgiving afternoon at our family estate in Greenwich, Connecticut, where my family's masks slipped off completely. I parked my rented gray sedan behind a row of luxury sports cars lining the wide driveway of our Greenwich estate. Outside, the first snowflakes of the season were drifting gently onto the manicured green lawn. Taking a deep breath, I grabbed my homemade pecan pie and a few modestly wrapped gifts, forcing a confident smile before walking up the grand front steps to the main entrance. The warm scents of roasted turkey and cinnamon rushed over me the moment the door swung open. My mother rushed out to greet me, but her eyes nervously darted toward the living room, as if my very presence were a violation of some family rule. She quickly took the pie from my hands and whispered under her breath, "You made it. Come in. But please watch what you say today. We have very important guests." The important guest my mother referred to was Chloe, Julian's new fiancée, who hailed from a wealthy high-society family in New York. Chloe sat gracefully on a premium leather sofa, wearing a designer dress and a blinding diamond ring on her finger. Seeing me walk in wearing a plain winter coat I had owned for years, Chloe shrugged slightly and whispered loud enough for the entire room to hear, "Oh, Julian, is this your sister? She looks surprisingly modest. Is that car out in the driveway hers? I thought this neighborhood didn't allow budget cars to park overnight." Julian wrapped his arm around Chloe, laughing proudly. "That's why I rarely mention her, babe." My father, Robert, sat front and center, holding a crystal glass of fine red wine. He ignored me completely. No greeting, no welcome, not even a smile. His eyes were glued to Julian, as if my brother were the only gold statue in the entire house. Chloe glanced at my homemade pie sitting on the coffee table. She slowly peeled off her gloves and sneered, "Oh dear, who brings homemade pies anymore? I already ordered a gold-dusted cake from a 5-star restaurant in Manhattan. Dad, maybe we should toss this cheap pie in the trash so it doesn't clutter the table." My father nodded immediately, gesturing for the housekeeper to take my pie away to the back kitchen without a second thought. My chest tightened, but I kept my face expressionless. This kind of disrespect was something I had endured for 30 years. The atmosphere at the Thanksgiving dinner table continued to heat up with Julian's boastful rambling. He bounced his leg, flashing his brand-new gold Rolex on his wrist, his voice booming across the room. "Dad, Chloe, this is the year my finance company goes global. I just successfully negotiated a venture capital deal in principle for $20 million from the Vance Strategic Fund." $20 million? My father's eyes lit up as he slammed his hand on the table in pure excitement. "Magnificent. Absolutely magnificent, son. I always knew my boy was a genius." Hearing the name Vance Strategic Fund, my heart skipped a beat. That was a subsidiary fund owned entirely by my holding company, Apex Capital. Just last week, my risk analysis team had placed an independent audit report on my desk regarding Julian's company. The report clearly indicated that his startup was on the brink of insolvency, severely in debt, and suspected of falsifying financial statements to commit investment fraud. My father beamed with pride, announcing boastfully to the entire table, "To give Julian enough leverage to kick off this $20 million deal, I've personally backed a short-term bank loan for him, using this entire Greenwich estate and my life savings as collateral. I trust you implicitly, Julian." I couldn't stay silent watching my father charge blindly toward financial ruin. I gently set my plate down, looking straight at my father and brother. "Dad, putting up our family home and your retirement savings as collateral for a short-term loan is extremely risky. Major venture funds like Vance have strict audit clauses. If they discover any discrepancies in Julian's books, they will cancel the contract immediately, and the bank will seize this house." The dining room fell into a dead, suffocating silence. My father's face flushed bright red with rage. He slammed his wine glass down onto the table, splashing red wine across the white tablecloth. "Shut your mouth!" my father snarled at me, pointing his finger like a loaded gun. "Who the hell do you think you are to question your brother's competence? A low-level wage slave like you making pennies knows nothing about high-stakes finance. You're just jealous of your brother's success, aren't you?" Julian smirked contemptuously, jumping in. "Exactly, Dad. She's just a bitter failure green with envy. How could someone like her ever comprehend the magnitude of a $20 million deal?" Chloe covered her mouth, giggling softly. "Darling, don't waste your breath on low-class people. They can only see the world through their tiny little bubble." I looked at the three of them teaming up to humiliate me, and then I glanced over at my mother, who kept her head bowed low, too terrified to say a single word. I swallowed the bitterness whole, not saying another word. I knew the real show had only just begun. My father's sudden explosion made the air in the dining room suffocatingly thick. The delicious aroma of food was now tainted with pure venom. I took a deep breath, suppressing the emotions bubbling inside me, and calmly stood up. "I'm sorry for interrupting dinner. I'm going upstairs to put my coat away. I walked up the red-carpeted oak staircase toward my old bedroom at the end of the second-floor hallway, the only place in this house that held any childhood memories for me. But just as my hand touched the doorknob, heavy, hurried footsteps echoed behind me. My father rushed up with a scowl. He yanked my hand away from the door, pulled a key from his pocket, jammed it into the lock, and turned it with a sharp, dry click. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" my father snarled, his finger trembling with anger as he pointed right at my face. "This master suite has been cleaned and set aside specifically for Julian and Chloe to stay tonight. Broke moochers like you don't belong in this place." Julian strolled up the stairs holding 2 glasses of champagne, casually leaning against the banister. Chloe walked right beside him, locking arms with a smug, triumphant smirk plastered across her face. Julian scanned me from head to toe as if looking at a filthy creature contaminating his house. He curled his lip, bursting into a loud, mocking laugh. "Hey, broke loser, pack up your cheap trash and get out. My high society business partners are coming over tonight. Having you around in this pathetic outfit just embarrasses my family." Chloe chimed in, putting on an exaggerated pout, though her words dripped with pure venom. "Darling, don't let her stand here too long. Her cheap clothes are going to rub the smell of city buses and dirty snow all over our expensive carpet. Maybe we should just call neighborhood security to toss her out and save us the trouble?" I turned to look at my mother. She stood at the edge of the first-floor landing, her hands trembling as she gripped her apron. She looked at me with a faint flicker of sympathy, but the moment my father glanced down, she quickly lowered her head, took a step back, and walked straight into the kitchen. My mother's silence and the way she turned her back on me cut deeper into my heart than 1,000 insults from my father and brother. In that exact moment, my heart turned completely to ice. Not a single tear fell. I didn't scream, I didn't argue, and I didn't beg for an ounce of mercy. The last fragile thread connecting me to this family snapped for good. I stared directly into the eyes of each one of them, my father with his bitter, hateful scowl, Julian with his pathetic arrogance, and Chloe with her condescending smirk. I gave a small, quiet nod, tightened my grip on the handle of my small suitcase, and turned to walk down the stairs. Julian's triumphant laughter, Chloe's sneering remarks, and my father's cold rejection echoed behind me like a funeral march. I pushed open the massive oak front doors and stepped straight into the howling blizzard outside. The biting, freezing winter wind of Greenwich slammed into my face, but it felt like nothing compared to the ice in my chest. Taking firm, steady steps, I walked toward my rental car, parked alone under the street lamp, ready to pour a bucket of ice water over the heads of the people who had just trampled all over me. I climbed into my car and slammed the door shut, cutting off the biting cold of the howling blizzard outside. The smell of cold leather seats surrounded me, but inside my chest, it was 1,000 times colder. I took a deep breath to regain absolute composure, then pulled out my encrypted corporate phone. I dialed Arthur directly, the chief legal officer and managing director of Apex Capital. The line picked up on the very first ring, his voice deeply respectful. "Madam Chairman, how may I assist you?" I looked through the snow-covered windshield toward the glowing chandeliers inside the Greenwich mansion. My voice was flat, sharp, and steady. "Arthur, trigger the emergency audit clause immediately. Unilaterally terminate the agreement in principle for the $20 million venture investment into Julian Vance's company. Reason: falsified financial records and severe ethical violations." Arthur hesitated for a brief second on the line before replying, "Understood, Madam Chairman. The audit file on that company is ready. And what about the short-term loan our fund holds, secured by the Greenwich estate and Mr. Robert Vance's personal accounts?" I gripped the steering wheel tight, my voice ice-cold. "Recall it immediately. Instruct our partner bank to trigger the foreclosure clause on the pledged assets due to borrower default. It's time we take back everything that belongs to us." "Understood, Madam Chairman. I will handle it personally right away," Arthur confirmed firmly before hanging up. While I sat alone in my car parked out in the snowy night inside the warm mansion, my family was throwing a joyous celebration. My father, Robert, was personally pouring overflowing glasses of expensive champagne, beaming with pride as he raised his glass to Julian and Chloe. "Cheers, everyone!" My father laughed loudly, his voice swelling with pride. "To my son's $20 million deal, and to our family finally kicking that bitter, envious bad luck charm out of our house." Chloe fluttered her eyelashes, clinking glasses with Julian. "Congratulations, darling. Tonight you're the most amazing man in all of New York." Gloating laughter and arrogant toasts filled the luxurious dining room. They truly believed they had won. But that joy lasted for exactly 5 minutes. Julian's phone on the dining table suddenly vibrated aggressively. Seeing the caller ID displaying the representative from Vance Strategic Fund, his face lit up with smug satisfaction. He clapped his hands, boasting loudly, "Quiet down, everyone. The investment fund is calling to confirm the wire transfer schedule." Julian arrogantly tapped the answer button and hit speakerphone, placing the device right in the middle of the table so the whole family could savor his moment of triumph. "Hello, this is Julian Vance, CEO. Are you calling to congratulate me on my Thanksgiving dinner and give me the $20 million payout schedule?" Julian asked boastfully. But responding to Julian's excitement was not a congratulations. It was Arthur's stone-cold voice ringing through the speaker. "Mr. Vance, I am calling to officially notify you that Vance Strategic Fund is unilaterally terminating all partnerships and canceling the entire $20 million investment package in your company, effective immediately." The dining room fell into a dead, suffocating silence. The smile on my father's face froze solid. Chloe stopped mid-sip of her champagne. Julian turned pale as a sheet, the glass in his hand trembling violently. "What? Are you kidding me? We signed the agreement in principle. Why are you canceling?" "Because our chairman of the board personally signed the emergency cancellation order after an audit report revealed your company falsified financial statements and is operating under severe debt." Arthur's voice boomed firmly over the phone. "Furthermore, your fraud file has been forwarded to financial regulators. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving evening." The long dial tone rang out, shattering the silence. The champagne glass slipped from Julian's numb fingers, crashing onto the hardwood floor and shattering into 1,000 tiny pieces. Julian turned pale as a corpse, his entire body trembling violently. He collapsed back into his chair, clutching his head with both hands, his voice choking in pure panic. "This can't be happening. How did they find out? My company is going under. Dad, I'm over $5 million in debt." My father, Robert, staggered back as if drenched in ice water. He grabbed Julian by the collar, roaring, "What the hell did you just say? $5 million? You told me your company was about to make you a millionaire." Standing nearby, Chloe glared at Julian with utter disgust. She ripped the diamond ring right off her finger, snatched her designer bag, and lashed out at his face. "You pathetic fraud. You lied to me. I was an idiot to waste my time on a broke, worthless loser like you." Ignoring Julian's desperate pleas, Chloe stormed out of the estate in her high heels, not bothering to look back even once. But my family's nightmare was only just beginning. Less than 2 minutes after Chloe left, my father's expensive phone vibrated incessantly on the dining table. The screen lit up with the caller ID of the senior credit director at Greenwich Central Bank. My father pressed answer with trembling hands, hitting speakerphone out of pure reflex. The bank director's voice sounded gravely serious and cold. "Mr. Robert Vance, we are calling to issue an urgent notice. Due to your son Mr. Julian Vance's company losing its guaranteed investment package and entering default, the cross-collateralization clause for your short-term loan has officially been triggered." My father screamed into the phone, his voice cracking in sheer terror. "What does that mean? You can't do this. This house is my only asset." "It means this Greenwich estate, along with all of your retirement savings accounts, have been frozen immediately to recover the debt," the bank director replied, cold as ice. "Furthermore, we must inform you that the full mortgage contract for your property has been reassigned to Apex Capital. Apex Capital demands that you complete the surrender of all assets and vacate the premises within 24 hours. The phone slipped from my father's numb fingers, clattering onto the dining table. He collapsed onto the floor, his eyes rolling back in shock. His entire life savings, his pride, and his high society home had vanished into thin air in less than half an hour. Apex Capital? What the hell is Apex Capital? Julian frantically whipped open his laptop on the table, his fingers hammering the keys in desperation. He shrieked like a lunatic. "Someone is setting us up. Let me see who the hell owns this Apex Corporation. I'm going to sue them. I'm going to ruin them." The loading circle spun on the laptop screen. My father dragged himself up, staring blankly at the display. My mother rushed out of the kitchen, tears streaming down her face as she looked at the two of them. The secure New York corporate registry system loaded the official details of the ultimate beneficial owner of Apex Capital. Bold black letters printed across the bright white screen left no room for doubt. Chairman of the board, Chief Executive Officer, and 100% shareholder, Sarah Vance. Estimated net worth, $150 million. Julian froze solid on the spot. His jaw dropped, his eyes bulging as if they were about to pop out of his skull. My father stared at the name Sarah Vance on the screen, his entire body convulsing, his face turning pale as a sheet. The broke daughter. The useless moocher they had just humiliated, insulted, and thrown out into the freezing blizzard. Was the billionaire CEO worth $150 million, holding the absolute financial fate and the only home of their family right in the palm of her hand? I sat quietly in my warm car, switching on the seat heaters and slowly sipping hot coffee. Through the window, I could see the lights inside the Greenwich mansion flickering frantically. I knew the real blizzard wasn't outside. It was tearing through that house, shattering every last shred of their arrogant pride. The secure phone in my hand buzzed relentlessly without a single second's pause. Notifications for calls from Dad and Julian flooded the screen over and over. 10 missed calls, 25, then 59 missed calls poured in, accompanied by dozens of desperate text messages. "Sarah, pick up. Sarah, save me. Please answer, Sarah." I let the phone vibrate in my lap. I wanted them to experience pure desperation, suffocating dread and helplessness. The exact feeling I had endured for 30 years every time they cast me aside. On the 60th call, when their panic had reached a fever pitch, I slowly swiped my screen, tapped answer, and put it on speakerphone. Instantly, the line exploded with hysterical wailing, loud sniffling, and my father's trembling, broken voice. Gone was the authority of the domineering patriarch, and gone was the arrogance of a high society elite. "Sarah, Sarah, my sweet daughter, it's Dad. Thank God you picked up." My father sobbed over the phone, choking on his tears in pure terror. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I was wrong. I was blind. The master suite upstairs is yours. This entire estate is yours. Please, please call the bank and lift the freeze. Call the investors and save your brother's company. We're about to lose everything, Sarah," Julian cut in, his voice pathetic and groveling. "Sarah, it's Julian. I'm so sorry. I'm an idiot. I'm useless. I know you've always been a good daughter. You've always loved this family. Please tell the auditors to pull the file back. If they call the police, I'll go to prison. Save me, Sarah." My mother sobbed softly in the background. "Sarah, please. Save your father and your brother." I listened to their desperate begging and overdue tears in absolute silence. My heart remained as calm as a frozen lake, unmoved, unbothered, and utterly cold. "Are you all done crying?" My voice rang out over the speaker, flat, sharp, and cold as ice. The other end fell instantly silent. The weeping stopped dead. "Dad, do you remember 4 years ago?" I asked, enunciating every word slowly. "When I was bedridden with a high fever in a tiny apartment, couldn't afford medicine, and called asking to borrow $500 for rent? You put me on speakerphone for the whole family to hear, called me a useless moocher, and hung up to wire $40,000 to buy Julian a sports car. Did you remember I was your sweet daughter back then?" My father stammered, his voice shaking. "Sarah, that was in the past. And less than an hour ago, I cut him off, you locked my bedroom door, pointed at my face and said, "Broke moochers like you don't belong in this place." Do you remember that? No. No, sweetheart. Julian manipulated me. I misspoke. My father babbled frantically, throwing his own son under the bus without hesitation. But you did say one thing right. My voice rose, commanding and powerful. That mansion really is mine. But not because you handed it down to me. 3 years ago, when the bank threatened to foreclose on your house, I personally paid millions out of my own pocket to buy out that mortgage and clear your debt to keep a roof over your heads. I did that because I still held out hope that this family had a shred of humanity left. Total shock descended upon the other end of the line. My father's labored, breathless wheezing echoed over the speaker. But tonight, you proved to me that this family doesn't deserve a single piece of my sacrifice, I spat, weighing every word. Julian said one thing right earlier. Pack up your cheap trash and get out. And now, I am returning those exact words to you. Sarah, please don't, my father shrieked in desperation. You have exactly 24 hours to pack up your cheap luxury trash and get the hell out of my house. 24 hours from now, if either of you is still on my property, my security team and local law enforcement will personally drag you out into the snow. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Without a second thought, I ended the call. I permanently blocked every family member's number, tossed my phone onto the passenger seat, and gently pressed the gas pedal. The car glided smoothly down the snow-covered road, leaving behind the pitch-black mansion and the people who had just paid the ultimate price for their arrogance and contempt. I made zero compromises. Exactly 24 hours later, Apex Capital's legal team, along with bank officials and local law enforcement, arrived at the Greenwich estate. The entire wealthy neighborhood lined both sides of the street, whispering amongst themselves and pulling out their phones to record. My father and Julian were legally evicted, forced to pack their personal belongings in absolute humiliation. There were no luxury suitcases or chauffeur-driven cars, only their own hands stuffing a few clothes into black trash bags, slinking out of the mansion under the scornful gazes of the very neighbors they used to brag to. The fallout that crashed down on Julian was swift and devastating. His company officially filed for bankruptcy. As his financial fraud and falsified reports were exposed, he was forced to sell off his gold Rolex, his expensive sports car, and all of his personal assets to pay restitution. On top of that, he faced probation, crushing legal fees, and a permanent ban from working in finance. The golden child's dream of becoming a high society millionaire crumbled completely, leaving him broke, drowned in debt, and shunned by the entire business community. My father, Robert, was stripped of all his pride, self-esteem, and arrogance. Having lost his home and his entire retirement savings, he and my mother were forced to move into a cramped, dingy rented apartment in a poor suburban neighborhood. The man who once held his head high, boasting about his genius son, now had to take on odd manual labor jobs just to cover monthly rent. Every night, sitting in that dark room listening to the neighbors argue, he lived in agonizing regret and remorse. He realized, far too late, that his own blind favoritism, cruelty, and greed had destroyed his family with his own hands. 2 years later, I returned to the Greenwich estate. The oak gates stood right where they had always been, but the gloomy, toxic atmosphere of the past was completely gone. I didn't sell the mansion for cash, nor did I move back in to relive painful memories. Instead, I renovated the entire estate into a charitable foundation named Hope, a sanctuary dedicated to welcoming and supporting underprivileged youth and young adults who had been abandoned or overlooked by their families. Here, they were granted scholarships, psychological counseling, and life skills training so they could stand proudly on their own 2 feet, building a bright future without ever suffering suppression or contempt from anyone. Looking at the radiant smiles of those young people inside the house that had once been filled with ice, I realized a profound truth. Blood relation is sacred, but it is never an excuse for anyone to trample on your dignity, insult you, or strip away your self-worth. The sweetest revenge isn't driving people into a corner. It's living a life that is brilliant and free, and transforming the pain of your past into the strength to shelter those who need it most. Thank you for riding along and listening to today's story on Revenge Mosquito. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel with notifications turned on so you never miss our next journey of justice. Stay strong, and always know your worth. Thank you, and I'll see you all in the next story.